And excited to have the Malaysians over. Thanks for coming over. How was the flight?
Fantastic.
Good stuff. Did you enjoy the queues at the airport? Yeah, we've got some VIPs
so
coming in. All right. Okay. Right. So we're gonna talk today a little bit about ASEAN success stories. And I thought what we'd do is we'll start off with a little kind of positioning statement from me to you guys. And then we'll try to define exactly what success means for our panel. So just to sort of share where I'm coming from, I'm a big believer in something I call the global tribe of awesome. And I think these are the people for whom ideas are currency and risk is an acceptable route to innovation. And I also believe that through innovation, we can solve pretty much all of our challenges and find some collective nirvana. So that's the big picture. I think within businesses, certain cultures can either empower or stifle innovation, and we're going to talk a little bit about that soon. I also think the cultural landscape of business is a critical influencer in the sustainability of a business. So within ASEAN, as I'm not from ASEAN, but I live and love the region, I've no doubt there are a same percentage of people here who embrace those ideals as there are in any other region around the world. But I think right now we have an opportunity in ASEAN because we've got strong economic growth and there's a growing confidence in the potential of the citizens here. And it's breathing life into the most creative among us. And therefore, I'm looking forward to ASEAN citizens taking their place at the top of the global creative economy. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that works. And as long as the conventional powers that be don't stifle that, I think we've all got a very positive future. So with that as a starting point, I'd like to ask Desmond first. How do you define success? And do you think your definition of success is influenced to any degree by your nationality or being part of ASEAN?
Well, thanks, Matt, for having me here. I think to me, success is both internal and external. External successes are defined by material gains and wealth. But to me, internal success is more important, which is touching lives. I come from a business where we work with youth all the time, millennials between 15 to 25 years old. You know, we believe in giving opportunities to young people to shine and to fulfill their potential. Touching lives is definitely a way to see how successful we've become as a company, as a corporate citizen, and also as part of the community. Thank you.
Feel free to jump in. I'm coming to all of you in turn.
For me, success is extremely transient. I also think that there is, so much so that I feel sometimes that it is not there. It's almost like climbing a mountain. I remember this is a really painful story of mine. I was climbing Mount Kinabalu with zero background in sports. I don't even, stretch. And Mount Kinabalu is one of the highest peak for my country. It was one of the really high peak. And you climb really excited, and you go on to one point where you could see a lot of stuff. Whoa, you are here! And you turn around, there's something else that you have to climb. And you keep doing that. And even at the peak of, the peak is called peak low, despite its height, it's called peak low, like the lowest, like really literally. And you still look around, and there's just so many more points that you could climb if you want to, or if you choose to. So it's never really about success for me, especially when it comes to content, especially when it comes to what you deem worked for you did not work for your audience. What you deem worked for this particular country didn't work for another country. It's no longer a word that is a measurement at all for me.
Success. I think it would be when everything's been said and done. somebody who really matters looks at me and says, well done.
Well done.
That's fantastic. Actually, we should keep all of the answers that succinct, considering that we're running a bit late. Great. So obviously, you know, when we come on, RJ was kind enough to sort of regale everyone with our job titles and our sort of corporate achievements. How do you describe what you actually do, though? I mean, tell us a little bit about what you actually do at your firm? What's your role? What's your driving point? Yeah, Desmond, that was sorry, Raymond. Yeah.
I like telling people I pretend to know what I'm doing. But seriously, usually strategy and risk shouldn't be together, right? Somebody else should be handling the risk. Somebody else should be handling the strategy. Having said that, though, good strategy requires an understanding of risk, and good risk management requires an understanding of strategy as well. So on the strategy front, my job is to support the whole organization, anybody and everybody, basically red teaming the team, right? Challenging groupthink, making sure that there is a voice there that is providing loyal opposition to any and all of the ideas, and providing a lens that steps back from the here and now and the day-to-day. I think that's one of the challenges of any organization, the ability to challenge groupthink. And the flip side is on the risk management front, you know, not less looking about risk actually as about looking at opportunities, because for every risk there's an opportunity there, and how do we turn things around and what do we do with that, et cetera, et cetera. One of a CSO of Lenovo, he was asked, you know, what's the number one rule for a strategy officer? And he said, be interested, not interesting. Right, so it's always about, you know, focusing on everybody else, being a good listener, and in the process actually helping them. They've got the answers, you just have to help them surface them every now and then.
How important is creativity as a term for your role and your approach to it?
We're a content company, 100% content company first and foremost, and so the ability to look at the risks associated with delivering creativity, whether again it's being stifled, whether there are processes that are, you know, that are getting in the way of doing certain things. And the focus will always be about, okay, how do I make things better? How do I look for the next story? How do I tell this story in a new way? How do I provide an atmosphere for creativity? And yet at the same time, how do I focus that creativity towards something that is very specific? How do I understand the audience? How is the audience evolving? And so on and so forth.
With that in mind then, being a big organization, a lot of talent, a lot of history there, how do you measure creativity? Is it an economic indicator? I mean, how do you measure it?
While there are the usual ratings or the usual page views or the usual all of that stuff, I think, you know, our organization invests significantly in research. We have about over 200 focus groups that are going on live every day throughout the country, right? Trying to keep a pulse on what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. So there are the hard metrics, but then there are the soft metrics, the very, very soft metrics of somebody whose life was changed because of a story, somebody whose state in life was alleviated because they were, you know, we cast a spotlight on them through our news programs or something, or an issue, et cetera. So there are those, and those are the ones that ultimately matter, and those are the ones that actually keep us going and keep the fires burning.
Okay. Interesting. Desmond, you're also in the content business. Do you have similar ways to look at the creativity, or as a little bit of a smaller organization. Would I be right to say that?
Yes, we are
Yeah.
on the opposite spectrum of Raymond's company. Just a little bit of introduction. My company is Web TV Asia. We're actually a young startup in the digital media entertainment space, about 3 years old. It's interesting that Raymond and I share a similar scope, which is strategy. Whether it's a big company, a small company, we need people to think ahead, plan ahead. So my role really is, as a strategy person, trying to put together 3 most important pillars that grow our company, driving our company forward, which is content, marketing, and technology. Responding to your question, I think, yes, we take creativity very seriously, but also very casually at the same time, because we want to give our people the freedom to experiment, to innovate, without being limited in a box. So how we measure creativity is, of course, there's output, but there's also the freedom to express, the freedom to voice your opinion, the freedom to try something new without being, told or without being instructed that this is the only way. So, we welcome all sorts of opinions. I think this is how we want our young people, our young talent, to fulfill and shine in their potential.
Okay, good. Now, Yona, you've, as far as I know, you've been content as well as involved in the production of content, but you have fingers in different pies. Maybe you can give me an idea of exactly what you kind of do on a day-to-day basis, and maybe how creativity is an impact or an influence in there.
Okay, while we wait for this one. I used to be doing a lot of content, even in Philippines with ABS as well, back in 2007 and 6, 7, yeah. We were doing a lot of television work, film, not just for the country, but also out of the country. And the measurement of success has always been how many people are watching it, what sort of awards you are getting, how can you push envelopes for developing the same kind or a different kind of way of telling the same issues again and again in different manners. How do we take this to the next level, for example? And then some, say, 7 years ago, I think I have this huge meltdown of sort professionally, and I feel that it is no longer important for me to be creative. I want to see how I can help develop creativity. That became a lot more important to me. And then I started doing a lot of different work, and today I run 3 different NGOs. One is Global Entrepreneurship Movement, and I run that to basically allow more creativity amongst entrepreneurs to take flight, and we internationalize them, giving them market access internationally. For Kaki Seni, which is about the arts, we work with a lot of grassroots, we work with the industry to see what are the enablers that are needed so that they can be free to do what they want to do. We put in place tax incentives, we put in place things that they didn't imagine they need, but when it is there, then it makes for them to do their work a lot easier. We also do a lot of work using content, whether it's film or television or web content, and work with the disadvantaged and get them to tell their stories so that they could see how their stories would come out in film, so that they can understand how they can impact other people with their stories. So it's no longer just about empowering young people watching a film that's not made by them, but we're talking about empowering themselves, doing films and making films that mean something to them. I think it's a completely different model that really interests me now. It is more about how are people responding to stuff that is out there, that is being put out. I want to see that end, not from the creator's end itself, but also on the receiving end. What is it that they're after? What moved them? What ticked them? What made them adopt a certain behavior or a certain hey, I'm going to watch shows now on this really small screen, and it doesn't matter what's the mise-en-scène in the whole screen, because it really didn't matter. But I want to see what this person say and how this reaction is. So that becomes a lot more interesting. And it's allowed me to be so close to the audience. I used to think performing in a space like this, and I do a lot of performance before this, sorry. And I could be performing here, and you know, you're just like, I reach out and I can touch your face. But right now, I'm sitting next to my audience, and I understand why this person liked this content that she's consuming. And that is liberation.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. I mean, from your point of view, certainly working in NGOs, do traditional media outlets, the likes of the channels, do they factor into a sort of distribution strategy for you guys, or are you talking about shooting content, working directly with small groups, and then putting it out on social media? Is that your preferred route?
We do all. We do it all. I think whatever that works for the content, we will do it. Obviously, because of my background and what I used to be doing, so it's not really difficult to get work onto television or onto the big screen. It is, again, what matter to the content that's produced. If I put it on a big screen, does it matter more? Or if I put it on a small screen, hey, it's worked a lot better for the content itself. So that's what we're really after.
As all of you guys are involved in some way, in shape and forming into content, how much of ASEAN is a market for you? I mean, do you see the content you produce, is it for a nation, is it for a regional market? And also in terms of distribution, do you face different challenges in taking your content out across the region, or do you even want to? Desmond, maybe you can go first.
We're a Malaysian company, but we're now operating in 10 countries in Asia. In ASEAN, we're in Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. Philippines will definitely eventually be part of it. I think the real challenge is because of the diversity of cultures, languages, and also consumption habits, and also economic ability to purchase or to consume content. What we realize is wherever we go, young people, millennials, they all want to be heard. You know, like what Yuan said. No, it's no longer the producers, the media networks talking to the audience wants to talk back. And that's what we found on any form of social media, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, everybody wants a voice of its own, especially the young people. I think the key word is democratization of content. And people just have that outlet. And I think Asia is coming to the fore, where, you know, the digital superhighway simply enabled all these young people to just rise up and express their creativity, express their ideas, express their opposition to mainstream ideas that's been, you know, possibly forced on them, and they want to fight back. So I think that's a common thing that I see.
Raymond, do you want people talking back to you at ABS-CBN? What's the risk profile there?
They always talk back.
How about the whole of ASEAN? Would you like them to be talking back? I mean, is that your market strategy to engage?
We've been very fortunate. The organization currently has its content available in over 50 countries. ASEAN has been very kind to ABS-CBN. Some of our shows, in fact, and some of our stars have been named stars and have won awards in Vietnam, Thailand, et cetera, et cetera. So the content is out there. In my previous job, my previous life, you know, speaking of cultural diversity, speaking about all of those things, it's a very fascinating concept. And I used to tell my programmers, if you look for differences, you'll always find them. If you look for similarities, you'll also see them. Focus on the similarities, right? I mean, rather than focus on what makes this market different. Oh, you know, I've heard this a million times. It's not going to work in this country because we're different. It's not going to work in this country because we're different. But guess what? It worked. right? So I think there's that. The other bit in terms of change management and thinking about change right now is this. In the past, the challenge has always been writing stories for Filipinos, or writing stories for Thais, or writing stories for Indonesians or Singaporeans or Malaysians. As compared to, so I'm a company writing stories for, let's say, Filipinos, as compared to being a company based in the Philippines writing good stories. And if you're focused on writing a good story, it doesn't matter what language it's in, it doesn't matter, what setting it's at, because we've seen content all over the world travel all over the world, regardless of language barriers, regardless of culture, regardless, Slumdog, Crouching Tiger. I mean, you can name so many movies all over the world that have become big hits all over the world. It's always about a good story, rather than a story for this.
Well, just building on that, I mean, just a slight digression then. If we're looking at universal storytelling being very, very relevant to pretty much any grouping, any region, is there some way to also include the diversity? For example, in the Philippines, we have so many languages. Is there a necessity to create content for those?
Yeah, there's a lot of work and a lot of experimentation going on in our company as it relates to what we refer to as hyper-localization, right? So rather than a one-size-fits-all, even within the market, then you start looking at all of these different things. And it isn't just about language, it's also about psychographics, it's also about profiles. Again, given the multitude of platforms and pipes available all over the world, people will pick and choose, right? There is no one-size-fits-all for the most part. Having said that, though, we were just talking before we entered, many have spoken about the death of radio or the death of linear TV, and the reality is they're all still around and doing extremely well. I was citing a study that I read just a couple of days ago, wherein over-the-top viewership, rather than diminish linear TV viewing time, actually added to the total media time, right? So the whole aspect of media compression, consuming more media in less time, is very, very real, and it's additive rather than subtracting from one platform to another.
Desmond, do you see that as does that factor into your equation? Are you trying to eat some time from sort of more conventional viewing habits, or are you trying to add to the time that people spend in watching and in engaging with?
Well, first of all, there's data to show there's a shifting, but it doesn't mean it's a complete shift. So I agree with Raymond that there is room to coexist. I think it's about growing a bigger pie rather than eating into each other's pie. Talking about pies, I was just thinking about a case study that I wanted to perhaps show. It's Little Apple. It will illustrate what Raymond said earlier about the diversity of cultures, but it transcends cultures when you have good storytelling. So this case study that I hope that you can show is using music and dance to transcend cultures and unite in one message, if we may. Yeah.
Is that a subtle pitch to play your video at some point?
It's more than subtle.
Well,
but this is the only video that I would like
audience,
to,
but
for the benefit of the audience.
Why not? Yeah. Ewan, with the conversations that we've been having, some of the focus obviously is on ASEAN success, and I wonder whether for you feel that success in this region or success in Malaysia has something to teach the traditional ways of measuring success, which I guess come primarily from the Western practice. So is there something within the region or something within your country, and it will go to all of you to jump in if you like, but is there something we can be teaching the West about what success really means, or should we just be using the practice that we've inherited, I guess?
I mean, if we really talk about content, I mean, the West is already looking at the East. they are looking at China. China is one now. Right now, Wanda Group is already the biggest owner of all the exhibitors in the world. And but China is also, everybody's looking at everybody, wondering like, do I have it? Do you have it? Do I have it? Do you have it? But the conversation on ground is still very raw. It's still very much, you know, when we're executing, is still the conversation is about how do we do this for this particular market? How can we do this to make more money, for example? The biggest measurement of success at this point in time is still how much money you're making from whatever things that you're doing. So that is still a measurement that, like it or not, it's going to measure a lot of good films, a lot of good television, a lot of transmedia products. And when we were in Beijing, and we were like one of the scripts that we were prototyping, we were at number 11 out of like 600 over scripts. And the first question that the investors were interested in is that which market is this going to hit? What kind of profile of audience are we specifically talking about? As if like we could really put a lot of things into one. And also, what are the actors going to be like, so that they have a really clear idea of how much money that the product is going to be made. And this are, again, the same kind of conversation we used to have back the days when I was doing content for real, which was like 17 years ago. I feel that it's really unfortunate. And then when the same script traveled to the States, because, you know, it's a story that could work globally, it doesn't matter who acts in it, you know, it really doesn't matter, because we wrote it in Chinese, we have one in English, and we have one in Malay, and it all are different if you know how to read each one. But it's got an amazing structure. And same question from Hollywood, asking us the same question. So if we shoot this, I mean, this is primarily for Hollywood release, do we also look at some Chinese acting in it? It's again the same kind of questions that's being asked. So when we work in ASEAN countries, for example, as much as we like to say, yes, I'm a production company, or I'm a content creator based from Manila, but doing stories, really, is there someone going to listen to what we're saying and what we're putting out?
So you're seeing the kind of success based at the moment on the money you make, the bigger is better, bigger audience, more money.
The number of audience.
So it's not enough to just say well done. We want to see how much money we're making and how big our audience is. Now, from the entrepreneurial side, because you're also connected to startups, and you are a startup, and I'm sure lots of startups watch your content. Therefore, you know, there's not enough room for all of these huge unicorns. And you mentioned earlier on that how much money you make. For a lot of tech companies, it's how much money you raise is actually the metric of success. Do you think, therefore, then we should be challenging, because you guys all challenged that personally at the beginning. Do you feel there's some way we should be challenging that as a corporate culture or a business approach to measuring success? Desmond?
Well, I think in terms of measuring success purely from the financial or investor's point of view is a question of patience. So as a startup, you know, as founders, you know, we want to build a great company. We want to create good content. We want to have happy audience. But our investors may not necessarily see it that point. You know, our 3-year view is their 3-month view, if you know what I mean. So back to what I think how we should really measure success is really, we are all content companies. Our audience are our judges. They judge us based on how well they receive what they're watching. You know, whether it's ratings, page views, or whether they actually, you know, pay for the subscription. So, you know, it's not just money, but it's actually validated that we create good content wherever we go.
Yeah, one can't escape the metrics associated with the business. I mean, as a publicly listed company, we have a fiduciary responsibility, obviously, to our shareholders. Having said that, though, a couple of things. One is challenging ourselves is actually arguably as important. So we've got our own innovation labs and our own innovation efforts inside the company, but let me paraphrase that, not inside the company, something that we support, but because we know that by keeping it in the current company, which is born, bred, and raised in back in the days of black and white TV, we're going to have to keep these units outside of the company in order for them to grow the way that any startup would grow. So that's one, right? Don't give them SAP and don't give them all of that. I mean, let them run the way that a startup would normally run. There's a lot of emphasis on experimentation and innovation. Online, multi-channel networks, you know, the last thing you want is to polish up an amazing YouTube act, right? The fact that they've got all of these millions of views is because they are who they are. So part of it is resisting the desire to want to make you better, because arguably, you know, better in our eyes may not be, you know, better there. So there is that. So our willingness to challenge ourselves, our willingness to challenge how we tell stories, what stories we tell, et cetera, become important. I'll go back to your previous question, though, about is there anything that makes content creation in Southeast Asia, unique? I would say arguably so. Stories matter. Everybody in this room, all throughout the world, has a story that's busting to be told, right? And the job of a content creator is to surface those stories, really, and afterwards be able to tell them in a way that makes more people want to listen to that story. I think the challenge, or not the challenge, I think the metric that we also apply to ourselves in our organization is how those stories change lives. You know, the ratings are great and all of that, but I had mentioned earlier the softer side of the whole thing. Is there a movement that gets generated? Is there a life that gets changed? Is there a relationship that gets mended somewhere? And we may not know all of those stories, and we may not get all of that feedback, but that matters, because at the end of the day, it gets very scary when all you see is an audience share or a rating point, and for each of those points is actually a person, a family, a household, et cetera, et cetera. And we don't want to lose focus on the real people behind those numbers. And I think that's part of how we keep ourselves energized.
Oh, interesting then. So let's zoom up then to look at the region as a whole. Are there any top of mind success stories that you think, when you think ASEAN and you think success stories, are there any individuals or organizations or companies that immediately spring to mind? Yuan, why don't you take the lead on that, unless you want to defer?
No, there are quite a lot, actually. I mean, specific names, I'm getting old. I can't really, my synapses really aren't working anymore. But there are amazing stuff like, well, you know, if you were to YouTube the most touching commercials in Asia, you will see loads and loads and loads and loads of it non-stop. And they're really very different from the most touching commercials in America. I mean, first, you won't even really have that category. It's really quite a tough luck to find a touching commercial from the States. But that's how we're actually driven. We like to see things that really touch us at the core. And there are, I'm just saying that there are not enough, like we know of each other so much. We're really quite close to each other. Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, we're really so close. I'm just saying that we're not doing enough work together. That's really what I'm saying. I'm just saying that we're not crossing content as much as we could be and should be, and that is such a waste. We have been talking about co-production for years, and till today, the idea of co-production is still being debated. Which part is co-production? Like, is it the producers co-producing with different producers from different countries? That's co-production. Or are we co-production it in different countries, and therefore I shoot the same story, Malaysian story, but I shoot it in Makati, for example. But I take it back to Malaysia and screen it there, and you guys know nothing about it. That's somewhat of a co-production. So what is co-production? But for me, that concept, if we're able to really harness that strength of what we can be as ASEAN, where we can cross over easily and make stories, that's when we will find a lot more similarities, a lot more on how we could work together and do great things.
So you're saying there are success stories, but you feel passionately there should be some more.
There should be a lot more.
Okay, well, let's maybe bounce back to you guys to see if you can think of any success stories that come to your mind. And also, do you echo UN State sentiment that we should have more, that there should be more? And in which case, what might they look like?
I echo UN. I think ASEAN is not talking to each other enough. But there is one success story a long time ago. There was way before the days of, you know, Philippine Idol, Malaysian Idol, Singapore Idol. There was a singing reality show called Asia Bagus, if some of us remember. You know, the number one singer from each country coming together in Jakarta for one night of battle to the death. And I think Indonesia won that version. I think that was the one last success story on TV where everyone in ASEAN, you know, in the Philippines, in Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, could all hear each other's songs. And we never had one like this since then. I think it was 20 years ago.
But what was interesting was Asia Bagus. The last Asia Bagus I saw was actually sponsored, produced by Fuji Network Japan. So it's exactly. So it's, you know, so it's actually a Japanese format, you know, brought to Southeast Asia.
We need a bit of prodding. We need someone from within or without ASEAN to actually kickstart, you know, spark the fire and do this again.
What might be the challenges then of doing that as you're kind of at the top of the tree in terms of resources, I would guess?
No, I think it's really, you know, just getting relationships going, right? I mean, the relationships across the content creators in Southeast Asia. I worked in my previous jobs, both at Disney, at NBC Universal, working around the region. The regional broadcasters, the regional media folk, have very close relationships with everybody else. But the local teams don't seem to have that sort of network going. I think it's really that. And then the experimentation begins to happen because there's a relationship there. Oh, let's check it out. Let's, you know, start off with baby steps, etc. And before you know it, and it doesn't have to start big. I think we always tend to have this, okay, let's come up with this great, big, grand epic and have, you know, millions of dollars and so on and so forth. And sometimes it's just, let's just get it going. Let's have a 3-minute piece and let's start from there, and then it's baby steps, and before you know it, you're down to a 22-minute piece, and before you know it, you're at 48 minutes, and then you've got a full feature, whatever it may be. So I think the baby steps are going to be very, very important.
Well, as we have some government members in the audience, do you think there's any improvements in policy that could support that? Because obviously in some countries you have restrictions on different types of media ownership, you have different levels of, how can I put it, curating content. Do you think that the policy from the government down could stimulate more collaboration and cooperation?
I think looking at the success stories, for example, of, let's say, Slumdog, right, UTV, and actually, you know, a whole bunch of things, and the ability to finance these productions on a limited basis right now. It's a single venture sort of investment, et cetera, et cetera. That's regardless of, you know, whether it's government or any other organization. I mean, I think it's just about wanting to get it done and get things going. You speak of stuff like Pinewood, for example, in JB, or you speak of some of the incentives that the MDA in Singapore offer, etc. They're all great, but at the end of the day, it's, you know, it's like just let it be, let loose, I think, and the creative folk, if they're passionate about it and if they've got a vision for what they want to happen, in my mind, I think that'll happen on its own, and then later on, which is, I think, is part of the mantra of this whole creative cities, creative economy sort of thing.
I think creative cities is really about the crossing over of different people with different background, different culture, and coming together and make it more rich. I really don't think this is a job for the government, or this is a job for any big company to start, or let's lighten, or let's, you know, address the policy so that we can have more people coming in and make this a better melting pot. It's really about just extending your arms. Whether you're a government, whether you are a corporate, you just extend an arm and say, come on in and play. That's all we need. That's all really it takes to really stimulate. Sometimes you're just so much in the doing of what you're doing every day. You forget that there are actually stuff that could make you grow too. There are stuff that could make you as a creator, as a content creator, want to be able to see different side of things, and going to different places and working with different people, collaborating. Really not the most comfortable of things, but really will get that creativity going, will get that innovation going, and then it's really just saying, come. It's really just that, yeah. And people will be drawn, like how people are drawn to Tokyo. And all kinds of people create strange things in Tokyo. And there's no change in the policy or the way that they censor stuff or whichever. In fact, they're one of the more stringent ones. But people just go and create stuff because they kind of feel that, hey, that has got that energy of creation, and let's get there. And I think ASEAN countries need to look at that and be a little bit more encompassing to let creativity flow.
Do you feel there's room for then an ASEAN telenovela? Because they seem to do quite well. The Koreans do a good job. The first one I saw was over here was a mermaid. That was quite interesting.
Very interesting. No, I believe there are. You know, one needs to be mindful, obviously, of whether it is cultural sensitivities as well. But again, if you park those things aside, you deal with them because you have to deal with them, you know, whether it is the sort of look and requirement that whether it is Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, whatever they may be, right? Again, glass half empty, right? If we're looking at the issues that get in the way, then you'll never get anywhere. But if you look at the other half, and it's like, okay, within this sandbox, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do, and I think that's where we just need to be looking.
And to be really honest, if you want to, you know, go and talk about the sensitive stuff, just go and talk about it. Really, just go ahead and talk about it. And then when then you realize that by the time you get it out, gee, actually it's not that sensitive. So what's everybody talking about? It's really about that. And I really think that we should stop curtailing even ourselves. Creating stuff and thinking that, oh, this may not be what, you know, I'm not part of this culture. I shouldn't be talking about this culture like this. But sometimes when you do that, that's when good content is really.
Do you have a great Twitter account that we can follow? Because I'm sure, I'm
I
sure
do,
you've got some
really.
good shares on there, right?
Yeah.
We're just going to slowly wrap up. I mean, I want to give everyone a chance to see what Desmond's been doing with a viral video. It's very short and it's quite interesting. It'd be a good way to introduce questions as well. But one last question for you all then, just to build on that, is what kind of big creative ideas can you come up with in the next 10 seconds for the future success of ASEAN? Or are there opportunities that you see or that you're searching for right now? Desmond, why don't you take that?
If I have all the resources that I have, I would like to create the first ASEAN digital content creator hub. I think it's already there in each country, but it's not coming together yet. You know, you might not know, last year during the last ASEAN summit in Malaysia, they launched the first ever ASEAN channel called Go ASEAN, if you have the chance to watch it. You know, if we could do a digital version of that, I would like all the millennials, young people in ASEAN to come together and create compelling, great content for the future.
Great.
You and your big idea.
You know, for me, I really believe in the power of grassroots, in the power of people, and the kind of voices that they actually own and have. So just throw cameras at as many people as you want to put them together in small space, big space, whatever space, and just let them play. Really, just let them have fun, and great, amazing stuff will come out of it, I'm sure.
A content fund. You know, it's all about great ideas, right? If you've got an amazing idea, the money will follow. But regardless of the money being available, if the ideas aren't there, then there's nothing to fund.
We can start an endowment fund. How about that? You know, we have like so many different government here. Everybody just put in $1 million US, and then we'll start an endowment fund, and then we'll call that a content fund. How about that?
Well, that's getting some applause at least. Okay, good. Well, well done, all of you. Thank you very much. I'd like to give a big hand to our panel. Thank you very much.